Yeah, I think expectations are low. The rhetoric coming out of the Kremlin is that they would like this meeting to help normalize relations. Out of Berlin, the rhetoric speaks of engaging with Russia. I think that about sums up what can be expected here. It's simply an opportunity for the two of them to sit down and start talking again after the disagreements and the silence of the last few years.
Does Crimea still matter, Mr. Wuttke?
Certainly, it matters a great deal. It has changed the equation between Russia and Germany. I would agree that actually we expect little, but Merkel would not go to Moscow just to come back empty-handed. So something must have been prepared for her. It must have been an agreement on something. Russia is very keen to have the sanctions lifted. We welcome President Putin in Hamburg at G20 in July. Merkel is going to chair this. I can imagine that this also plays into the question how to treat Putin when he's visiting Germany first time.
How much does that have to do with Germany's aspiration, it seems, more and more, of becoming an intermediator of the world, almost?
Yes.
Mr. Wuttke, originally from Germany, is having a big laugh, but I'm going to come back to you later. But Mr. Cui first.
Yes, I think that it would be a very good opportunity for Chancellor Merkel to play a positive role, especially moderating, between the European side and the Russia side. But still, I think that she has to face a so big problem or so big obstacles from European side, especially within the member states of the European Union. If we know that there are different understanding, different feelings about Russia, especially so-called the threat from Russia in different member states. So I think, yes, this visit by Chancellor Merkel would be a very, very strong symbolic message to Russia, to other member states of the European Union. But I am very, very suspicious about any substantial achievement of this visit.
About that so-called international mediator role Chancellor Merkel seems to playing these days. You know, Mr. Wuttke, you laughed earlier, but you know, Madam Chancellor has actually hosted the daughter of President Trump in the G20 Women Summit and led her to explain about her love toward her father, even though there are different oppositions coming from the audience. So, but still, Chancellor Merkel, at the end of the dinner, suggesting she is playing the daughter a very instrumental role. And so, isn't that what she has carved for herself, an international mediator, linking the United States, Russia, Europe, everywhere?
Well, I was laughing because we Germans get raised after two world wars that we initiated and caused so much havoc to actually lay low and not be dominant in any world politics and just basically focus on economics, sort of reflecting on actually what Deng Xiaoping was propagating 40 years ago, to lay low and let others shine in the world politics. But of course, the fact that Germany is such an economic powerhouse, the fact that others that used to be dominant, like Britain and France, are stepping aside, left us in this awkward position where sometimes people like the Polish Foreign Minister Sikosty is yelling us, why don't you lead? But it's for us very, very hard. Merkel has dealt with the Greek crisis quite well, despite the fact that she made many enemies. She has been leading the sanctions, surprisingly, against Russia. And of course, she's trying to find a way how to deal with Donald Trump that is so different from her. And I think the fact that she's reaching out to his daughter, it just shows feminine charm and wisdom.
Great way to describe it. But what about from you, Mr. Sleboda? Is this meeting about Chancellor Merkel, or is it this meeting about President Putin?
Well, I'm sure both leaders feel that it's about themselves. I think a great deal of this for Chancellor Merkel is about optics and domestic politics. She's going into a heated election where she's facing Martin Schulz, who was the president of the European Parliament. And German business has been loudly complaining to Merkel for years about the regime of unilateral sanctions and then counter sanctions with Russia. It has really hurt German business. Germany and Russia were the top trading partners before the start of the crisis when the European Union and the United States backed the overthrow of the democratically elected Ukrainian government back in 2014. And German-Russian trade was, at the time, 80 billion euros. It has since dropped as of the beginning of last year to only 47 billion euros. German business is furious. They want the sanctions lifted because their exports to Russia, both manufacturing and agricultural, have suffered enormously. And I don't think that she's going to lift sanctions. Russia's certainly not prepared. They're prepared for sanctions regime indefinitely. In fact, Russian agriculture is booming here. Merkel needs the optics of giving German business some kind of bone. Giving them something that will help her domestically to shore up campaign funds. I think the finalization of the deal with Nord Stream 2, the gas route from Russia to Germany, which was announced that financing had been achieved with major European energy partners this week, will be a big part of that.
But, you know, Mr. Wuttke, you are from the German business community. How big a bone it has to be? And will that be only about this gas project or something else?
Well, I think that German business has been loyal behind the Chancellor, abiding to her plea in order to have sanctions. Of course, we don't like it. We like to engage in business, and we had, as rightfully pointed out, nearly lost half of the business. At the same time, companies have been selling WinGas, a gas distribution company, to a Russian company. So business was also going on and actually selling assets from Germany to Russian companies, such as a refinery to Rosneft. So it was not completely cut off, but more can be done. I think it's just not looking for funds from companies, because we don't donate really. But it looks like we are some sort of engaging again. The time of chill is over. We have to do something. We don't want to put Putin in the box, and I guess now's the right time.
Before I go to Mr. Cui, I want to go back to Mr. Sleboda, because you do see very interesting phenomenon. On the one hand, at the beginning of the Trump administration, he talked about getting closer to Russia. Eventually, it didn't work out until so far. And yet, you see the other way around with the Europeans, including Germany. Very cold at the very beginning, but right now try to warm up while the US cooling down. So how should we read the change of temperatures from two sides?
Yeah, the German government was extremely unhappy with Trump's election in the United States. The German state media, Deutsche Welle and others had effectively campaigned for Hillary Clinton. In fact, many European leaders openly endorsed her. And they've paid a price for that. U.S.-European relations have chilled dramatically, President Trump has even gone so far as to at least rhetorically present Germany with a large bill which he claims they owe for his defense of U.S. defense of Germany with NATO, whatever the reality of that. Chancellor Merkel is often depicted as a pragmatic leader, but I think the truth is more that she is a rather very fervent liberal ideological, and Trump is if anything the opposite. So they have very bad personal relations, and at a time when we have this split, this rift growing between the U.S. and the EU over Trump, and very bad relations between the EU and Turkey, particularly with Chancellor Merkel and the Turkish President Erdogan over the issue of refugees, and Erdogan threatening to flood Germany with even more refugees, something which has hurt her in domestic politics.
So your point is?
I think she's got to do a little bit of balancing with Russia at this point.
Balancing? What extent? What does it mean for political gains? To what extent it could become a political failure?
Yes. I think that for this visit, Chancellor Merkel not only she wants to give a very positive response to some business people in Germany. Because also in the last 2 years, against the background of the sanction over Russia from the European Union, there has been a very huge increase of investment from Germany to Russia. Also at the same time, how could Chancellor Merkel to deal with some especially negative response from her coalition partner? Also, we know this visit by Chancellor Merkel was announced by the German government at the first time. It was announced by President Putin and Merkel's partner in Bavaria. When this Prime Minister of Bavaria visited Russia in this March. So I think it gives a very, very interesting phenomenon or situation, say that yes, a balance between economy, politics, between the domestic politics and the international politics.
Just think about all of these politics. Quite an interesting timing, isn't it, Mr. Wuttke? I mean, the UK just tried to brought up its plan toward the European Union, and Chancellor Merkel even said we should have talk and dialogue before letting that plan to go to a vote. And also, France, at the time when Chancellor Merkel visits, actually is on its way to have a new president, but do not yet. So this is a totally interesting timing. President Trump just has his 100-day celebration, quote unquote. Isn't that interesting?
Well, first of all, I guess that on the outside, the relationship between Trump and Merkel looked tense. At the same time, I understand that he's once in a while calling her to ask for her opinion because she's the most well-versed, experienced global politician by now. So in a way, it looks much more tougher. The fact that she invited smartly his daughter to come over shows that she wants to reach out to him. At the same time, she has to look into her own constituency. The elections are around the corner. We have more than 1 million former Soviet Union citizens in our country that can all vote, and I know many of them. They're all with German backgrounds. They have now German passports. They were people that lived in Soviet Union for a long time. These people vote, and there has to be a resolution somehow engaging with Russia again. Crimea seems like a lost case. There's no hope that this is going to change anytime soon in the next years. And the deep affection that many, particularly East Germans, have for Russia, and it's reciprocated by the Russians. I know it. I'm married to a Russian. My father-in-law was a Russian diplomat over here. Is showing that actually the Russians feel deeply hurt by the fact that, in particular, Germany was turning its back on Russia. So something has to happen to bring actually some sort of hope to this. But at the same time, for Germany, it's a very tricky situation. I know this also in my family, because my daughter-in-law is Ukrainian, and so I have geopolitics in my family, and it's a nation that we don't want to let just fall apart. So for Merkel, it's a tricky way to reach out to Putin and try to get something out of this, and not just please business.
From the other, by the way, you have very complicated family politics to play with back at home. A lot of sympathy for you, but Mr. Sleboda, how much do you think President Putin could wish that once he cracked Chancellor Merkel, he could also crack the whole European Union?
Yeah, I don't think that Putin has any intentions, whatever the salacious headlines in a lot of the Western press, of cracking Angela Merkel or the European Union. The European Union is a big trade partner for Russia. Russia would wish for better geopolitical relations. They're extremely unhappy with EU's actions in the Ukraine and the overthrow of the government there. But you know, they want to do business with the European Union. This is a capitalist government in the Kremlin, and Putin actually, to my belief, overly romanticizes Germany. There's a lot of Russians that feel that the Russian president is too close to Germany because of the time he spent there and the fluency in their language, and if anything, he has appeased. I think what Putin wants most out of this meeting is they want Germany to use its leverage, which the regime which seized power in Kiev, to adhere to the Minsk Accords. There is a whole raft of political portions of the Minsk Accords. It's primarily a political document to bring the regime in Kiev together with the people of East Ukraine, make them sit down and work out a political settlement between themselves. That's actually what the Minsk Accord does. And the regime in Kiev has absolutely refused to sit down with the people of East Ukraine. And a big part of that is because they fear that you know, their grip on power is tenuous. It's a result of the Maidan Putsch. And if they are faced to stand in elections and you know, at an open table with the people of East Ukraine, that really might lead to their regime falling apart.
I see. Mr. Cui, what is the best scenario for President Putin for this specific visit by Chancellor Merkel? Is it about at least go parallel, two tracks? One is about the discussion how to resolve the Crimea issue, the Ukraine issue in the future, and the other track is going at the same time, talking about trade, talking about resuming the ties, talking about going prosperous on both sides.
Yes, I think that that should be very ideal scenarios once this visit will be called a successful one. Because as we know, always once there is not any, agreement from both sides, European Union side, the Russian side on this position of Crimea, certainly there are very, very big political gap between two sides. But at the same time, I think always this visit by Chancellor Merkel also was regarded as a pragmatic visit, which means that yes, trade, economic cooperation, or some other issue could be touched by this within this visit. And also at the same time, we can find that for Chancellor Merkel, it's not only a business. It's not doesn't mean just for Mr. Wuttke. I think for Chancellor Merkel, because firstly she's a politician, he need to take consideration about how the domestic politics firstly, because as we know now already, Germany is in the election season. So for the CDU, it needed to take some more cooperation from his sister party. And also at the same time, between Mr. Trump and President Putin, I think that now everybody is talking about unpredictability. I think Chancellor Merkel will try to take a comparison between those two leaders. Perhaps compare with Mr. Trump, I don't think that I don't believe that there will be a very unhappy meeting between those two leaders. Perhaps to look for some certainties from Mr. Putin, from Russia, will be in the interest of Chancellor Merkel and Germany.
Well, okay, complicated enough for us, very complicated. And I guess it's the same thing back at home, right, Mr. Wuttke, for your family. So you probably could tell us as to what do you think President Putin could gain politically as a result of this? Will he have bigger bargaining chip toward the United States? Will he be able to talk to China and say, see, I also got these European partners now? Will Russia, as a result, get much better deals in terms of its trade?
Well, I guess that for President Putin, it's very important to be seen by his population to engage with the West again, and it is to show the effort in order to open the door again, lift the sanctions, despite the fact that in some areas, as rightfully pointed out, in agriculture, they benefited from the sanctions, but overall the people are hurt. It shows in the cities outside Moscow and St. Petersburg. And he has elections next year himself. The economy is not in very good shape, needs restructuring, and he has to show that he's engaging. Besides the fact that he was not really benefiting from this close relationship of China, where he has basically, if you look at the Russian emblem, the eagle looks east and west. And now for the whole time it had to look east only, and now he wants to emphasize the eagle looking west again.